I'll get going. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Stacy Brennan and I'm the curator of education for the Lehigh University Art Galleries. It's my pleasure to welcome you all today to our LUAG at Lunch series, a student-led series that presents various kind of discussions and presentations around works of art from the Lehigh University collections, and students offer insights or personal perspectives on those works of art. I am happy to introduce today Justine Pavia, who is going to talk about unintentional art and how looking at photographs of everyday life from our collection she'll lead you through an exercise to talk about, different points of view and how we can find beauty in the everyday. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Justine, and thank you so much.
All right, thank you for the introduction and welcome everyone. Today we're going to be looking at photographs and talking about unintentional art, what that is, what it might mean, and why it is important. So I'm going to share my screen. And we can get started. So to start off, let's just think about this question. What makes art art? Just take a second, think. There's no right or wrong answer, just what comes to mind when you think of art. And yeah.
I wasn't sure if we could just take the microphone or not.
Oh, yes, yes. Feel free. Just unmute yourself. Anything, any thoughts?
I guess to me, what would make art art is just the feeling around it, both by the artist and just by whoever's viewing it. It's funny that this is about unintentional art because before you made that statement, I would have said the intention behind it. The intention of the artist is what makes it art, but that statement kind of forces me to think about just walking past a building and seeing the paint chipped and wanting to take a picture of it, because to me it's art. The form, like the form that the chip painting like took. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah.
I would just say the feelings and connections that you bring to it.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with what Sarah was saying. I think the feelings and the connections that you bring to it as a viewer can make something art. I think sometimes too, like I think the most powerful works of art sometimes raise more questions than they provide answers. So while sometimes works of art can point us in a specific direction or provide us with an artist's point of view, sometimes they're really very open-ended and they make us wonder about other types of things. So sometimes that can be a quality of art.
Yeah, both of your responses are wonderful. Yeah, art has a power to create a reaction in the viewer, and that's definitely part of it. And there's the two aspects coming from some expression coming from an artist and then some type of reaction from the viewer, whether or not it's intentional. It could go both ways. But yeah, any other thoughts?
I mean, I would agree with both what William and Sarah said, kind of that intention of the artist, but also kind of just the viewer's response is what makes it art. And I think kind of the emotion and feeling that you have when interacting with something could could create an artistic response in some way within you, no matter what it is.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. There's, it definitely has both the artist and the viewer's emotions. So now we're going to look at some photographs. So this is a gelatin silver print and taken by Lou Stoumen, who is actually a graduate of Lehigh University, majored in fine arts, and now he is famous for his cinematography. Yeah, so what do we see in this photo? There's a lot going on, but what do we see?
I think what stands out to me the most is the signs in the picture, in the photograph, rather than like the people that are actually there. That's what my eye was drawn to first.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of words in this photograph.
Yeah, I was gonna say something similar to what Sarah just said. All of these words and texts that are kind of all designed to draw our attention. So they're doing a pretty good job with that. And the other thing that I notice, these people that are coming out from underground, looks like they were just riding the subway. But also just like the amount of kind of light and shadow that's going on in this work too. Like there's, some really dark areas that kind of make it mysterious. And then just where the light is hitting makes me wonder if it's maybe first thing in the morning or, yeah, like if people are headed to their jobs, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the sun is kind of coming at this direct angle instead of a overhead view. Yeah, any other observations?
Another thing that I just noticed is just, I guess, the style at the time. Everybody that's like very visible in the picture is kind of wearing the same style hat and stuff like that, which I don't know. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of uniform almost, even though they're probably not told to wear a uniform, but yeah.
They look like they have, they're very direct in where they're going, like they're en route to wherever they're going and they're very serious. And they both have, or, the two main figures in this photograph have a newspaper underneath their arm, or the one gentleman's folding it or putting it away. So interesting to think about how, the time period that this may have been taken and how they got their news at that time through a paper newspaper, which we don't see as much anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, now it's all digital. You don't see as many people carrying their newspapers walking through the city, more just people on their phones. But so this photo was taken in 1940, which was right at the beginning of the US's involvement in World War II. And it is titled Going to Work. So it is the morning and they seem to be making their way probably to work. Knowing the time period and kind of the context of what might have been going on, what they might have been reading about in those newspapers, how does that change your perception of this photo? Like how do you, or maybe not change, or just how does it influence you, how you see and how you look at this photo?
Honestly, I feel like for me, knowing the time period didn't really change my perspective too much because of the fact that I feel like the photograph itself is very telling of the time period. But it does kind of maybe bring my attention more to that poster in the back that says Friday, just because it seems like it's somebody military style in that picture. So it kind of made me want to look more into like the signs and the backgrounds to see what type of things they were seeing. But other than that, I feel like it didn't really change my perspective too much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's so interesting that you saw that, Sarah. I have to admit, I didn't really notice that sign until you called it out. I think I was more focused on the subway sign, the interborough rapid transit, and how antiquated that is, in New York anyway, that since they've merged into one system. But yeah, it's a photograph where the more you look, the more you see. Maybe to Justine's question too, like it reminds me of, I don't know, like when I lived in New York City, but also even now, driving to work, sometimes I can kind of get lost in my own thoughts and sort of my own internal routine. And maybe I don't pay attention to the outside world. And knowing that this was taken in 1940, when there was so much happening in the world globally, maybe brings up some of those questions about like how much of our experience is internal and how much is external in this case.
Yeah.
I would add though, like honestly knowing the time period kind of gives the photograph a little bit more character, because now I feel like I know why they're all in such a rush. They're going to work, but there was just more seriousness in the time, at least from how I learned about it. Like there was more of a sense of urgency with everything, and everyone in this photograph that you can see is just very serious. And there's nothing to laugh about right now.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It does reinforce that seriousness, and they do look like they're on a mission to go to work. But then at the same time, where they're getting off the subway, there's a bar, there's like the Apollo Theater in the background. Is this kind of the end of the day and perhaps they're going to decompress and relax, or, do they happen to work in this exciting area?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's interesting to think how there's so many signs, there's so much going on around them, but in their minds, they're probably just like serious and kind of tense, just like in their head, in thinking about the news or whatever. Meanwhile, there's so much else going on that they are not focusing on. Yeah. So we're gonna move on to the next photo. This photo is called Lasalle at Amsterdam, New York, and was taken by Todd Webb. So imagine you go through your screen and are walking across the street with the noise of all the city, and you just walk up to these two men and you're in this scene. And how does this feel different or similar than the last photo we looked at?
I mean, the subjects in the photo seem to be smiling, or at least one of them is, which changes the tone a bit.
Yes.
Yeah, I would definitely agree that this picture has a lighter mood, and I would feel more comfortable walking up to these men than I would the men in the previous photograph. And it's not the most inviting, but you just know you're welcomed. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes. Yes. Exactly what I was thinking. Just more welcoming. Not like in a rush to be somewhere else. Any other observations, feelings?
I was just gonna say that the first one sort of made me feel a little bit overwhelmed, and the second one as well, but it's sort of like a different type of overwhelming. Like everyone has said before, it's a little bit more welcoming. So if I had to be uncomfortable in a situation, it would rather be in this one. I don't know. It just gives it's the vegetables and everything that they're selling gives it sort of like a nature atmosphere.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good observation, because there's a lot going on in both of these photos, and I think just New York in general, there's a lot going on, but somehow vegetables seem more natural than street signs. And yeah, it's a really, really good observation. So this photo was taken 5 years later in 1945, which brings us to after the war. And Todd Webb, the photographer, had lived through the Great Depression with no job, no money, and then he moved to New York City, became a photographer, and was actually in the war, in the Navy as a photographer. So what do you think, from his perspective and his kind of background, maybe, what do you think stood out about this moment, about this scene, that initiated him to take a picture?
I mean, I could imagine that, for someone who lived through the Great Depression, where things were pretty scarce, a lot of people did not have enough food to eat. Maybe just coming upon a produce stand like this on the street with all of the different varieties and possibilities would be something that one would take notice of. Maybe not so much today. It's, we have things at the ready that we can get typically, fortunately, but I could imagine how that would be something that one would really be drawn to after experiencing the Depression.
Yes, definitely, definitely. The abundance of food is a very big contrast from a lack of food in the Depression, or even fresh food. Probably not a lot of that in the Navy or in the war. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
I would agree with just the surplus of food because that's what stood out to me. And also, maybe it's important to take note of the prices of the food. Like most of the stuff, well, some of the stuff are even on sale. Like you get it for 25 cents today and stuff, which maybe a couple years prior when things were very scarce, that just wouldn't have been an option at all.
Yeah. Yes. The prices are definitely telling of the times. Yeah.
And I would say too, small businesses, and just like documenting these two business owners, we're going through that now, right? Where a lot of small businesses are suffering, but kind of just documenting these men and their pursuit of that American dream of a small business and thriving in that way.
Yes. Yeah. They definitely probably have a different outlook on life than the two men in the previous photo. So I'm assuming we all have been to the grocery store, but what it goes through your mind, like when you walk up to the produce section, and how might that, like, what are you thinking about? What's your grocery store experience, especially now with COVID? It's not as, it's more stressful, but, and how might that be different or similar to Todd Webb's reaction? I know for me with coronavirus, I'm like thinking get in, get out as fast as possible. I don't take the time to appreciate really the fact that we have all this food and we can get it.
Actually, I was going to say something similar. I kind of miss just being able to browse and like look at things and take my time. We've been ordering our groceries online and getting them delivered as much as possible. And So sometimes kind of you get what you get. Like, you get items that maybe you kind of picked out, but maybe they're a little different than what you imagined they would be.
Mhm.
And in this moment, like just kind of the luxury of being able to look through things and wander and pick up something and put it back down. I think those are things that maybe many people are missing right now.
Yeah, and I noticed there's less variety in the supermarket, which in the past I think would overwhelm me because there's so many different brands and so many different options. But now there are less, and I kind of miss that. So this photo, I mean, just the abundance of like variety of fresh fruits and vegetables is really attractive. And also the idea of shopping in an open air market versus having to run in and out of a supermarket.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would definitely agree with everything you guys are saying. But I would also extend to pre-COVID time. I feel like in a grocery store, a lot of times there's just a lot going on. Sometimes there's just a lot of people. And even before you kind of have that mindset, you just kind of want to get what you get and get out. You might stop and pick up a few things, but you're not really examining them as you would like in this situation. You're inside a building that's sometimes too cold or too hot or too cramped. You're not outside in this environment where you kind of want to take your time, and you're encouraged to actually look at the vegetables and make conversation.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Todd Webb probably wanted to show, wanted to appreciate this moment, and by taking a photo allows us to appreciate this moment. And today it is very relatable. So moving on to the next photo, which is untitled but taken by Leonard Fried in Deauville, France. Leonard Fried was born in Brooklyn but moved around Europe, the Netherlands, Germany, France, and back to New York. And his photography was humanistic, and he explored different groups of people and focused on their story and what they had to tell. So now, who do we see in this photo?
Well, obviously, first my eyes are drawn to the women that are there, and then where what is it, 5 women that are there, like seems like they're posing for the photograph, and then I noticed the people swimming in the background before. I'm not sure if that's a person on the boat or I'm not sure what that is, but to me that looks like another person on the boat. And then my eyes kind of go to like the photographer in the front.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of people in this photograph. And what emotions either are the people showing or that you have?
I feel like I can almost hear them. Like, I mean, we've probably all had the experience of maybe getting into like cold water or just maybe also because of how they're dressed, like maybe they did not intend to go swimming that day. Maybe they're just kind of spontaneously putting their feet in the water. And so like the 2 women on the left, their mouths are open, and I can just kind of imagine that they're maybe saying that the water's cold or something, and just how they're kind of reacting to it is what I respond to in this photograph.
Yeah, and I also will add, I mean, it seems like a very spontaneous moment where they're, because they're not necessarily dressed for the beach, but this like moment of joy that they're sharing, like this memory that they will all have, I think is really wonderful. And the way that their arms are, they're all there like in support of each other, just in case. So there's like this nice sisterhood that is conveyed through these women. And whoever's taking the photo is capturing that in some way.
Yes, there's a lot of happy, joyful, funny emotions going on. So I'm going to take another minute to look at this photo, and I want everyone to use the chat to type 3 words that you think best represent this photo. Any 3 words. It could be physically what you see, the emotions, or what it might mean, anything. Just 3 words that are the most important. So we have joy, laughter, memories. Interesting. Lighthearted, wet, beach. Yes. Careless, hopeful, free. Joy, friendship, cold. Yes, the water does seem to be cold from their reactions. Free, I really like that word. I think that's a very powerful word because it shows how spontaneous life can be, and really you're free to always just go in the water. Yes, and so also another thing about this photo is that there's a woman taking a photo, so it's kind of like a double photo. And do you think this was intentional? Or what might be the intention of a woman taking a picture of someone taking a picture?
The photographer never gets to be in the photo. So by having a photographer take a photo of another photographer, you're really capturing that sense.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say it really shines a spotlight on the act of taking a photograph. It's kind of this very metaphysical, photographer inside of the other photographer's frame. So it kind of makes me wonder, like, Leonard Freed, the photographer, like, what's he doing there? Like, is he with this group? Is he just walking by? Does he know these people or not? So it raises a lot of questions for me about that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely something to think about. And so I'm going to share a quote from Leonard Freed. Which is, ultimately, photography is about who you are. It's the seeking of truth in relation to yourself, and seeking truth becomes a habit. So seeking truth in relation to yourself. What are your thoughts? What might he mean by this?
Finding how you relate to the bigger picture or what your role is in life in that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like finding things that resonate with you. And that experience is kind of what makes photography in his view. So how does this quote help us answer the question, what makes art art?
I mean, I think that quote highlights how, art is always in relationship to something else. So like when you take a photograph, you're pointing your camera out at the world But I think what Leonard Fried was saying was that it's almost like it's a mirror too. Like it tells people what you're looking at and what you're interested in and what you're choosing. So maybe going back to this question about what makes art art, it has something to do with maybe similar to what we said at the beginning about how we make a connection or how we see a relationship between things, could be an important piece.
Yeah.
I don't know. I had something I was going to say. As soon as I clicked the microphone, I forgot. But I think it really goes back to just exactly what you were saying. I lost my words, man. But it's really about, the best way I can explain it is like what you see is more of a reflection of yourself than what's actually there. I think that's the best way I could put it.
Yeah. Yes, like what you notice is reflective of you, your internal view, not necessarily what it is that you're looking at. So with this, really, anything can be art. It's coming from how you look at it. And so that's really what unintentional art is, seeing something not considered to be art as art. And so what? We all have cameras on our phones. We can all be unintentional artists, photographers, because the goal of this mindset is to see life how you see art. Look at your life how you look at art. And yeah, and that can help us be more mindful and grateful because we all need that in our lives right now. Yeah. Does anybody have any comments?
Thanks, Justine. I think it's definitely, a great lesson in appreciating the everyday around us, particularly during this difficult time. So thank you for sharing these photographs with us.
Thank you for coming and engaging.
Yeah, thank you so much. We have lots of wonderful programs coming up in the next few days. So for individuals who are joining us through Facebook Live or through the recording, please look at the events section on our website at www.luag.org. And we hope that you will join us for future conversations around works of art. Thank you, Justine.
Great. Thank you, Justine. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.